we go. All right. So have you guys checked out all the videos? Okay. And the class recording is optional. Okay, that part is completely optional. What I'm recording right now is optional because you're here already. And if you get enough material from the first time, just when we talk, that's cool. Okay, if you think, okay, I want to go back and just review a few minutes of a particular topic, that's what the video is for. Okay, and that's why I want you guys to write down the index, the time index, so it's easier for you to find out which part of the video is about this. So you don't have to watch all the way from the beginning to the end. All right. However, the video that Professor Lieber has prepared, that part you have to watch because that really is a part of the material for this class. Okay. Now you may not. Now I'm not going to watch it. Okay. If I were a student in this class, I'm not going to watch the video because I can just Google, find out how to do it. Yeah. But that's because I have 30+ years of experience programming. Wow. Picking up another programming language is relatively easy for me. Okay. On the other hand, if this is not your fourth programming language, you might want to watch the video because Professor Lieber actually spent a lot of time to record the video, do all the closed captioning. I mean, the closed captioning is the killer part. You can make a 20-minute video clip, and it will take you at least 40 minutes to close caption it. And that's not overlapping. You cannot overlap the 20 minutes of recording with the 40 minutes of closed captioning. And the school, at one point, was providing some assistance to close caption all the videos, and it's not there anymore. So every professor has to either use pre-closed caption and pre-produced video clips from publishers, or they will have to spend their own time doing all the closed captioning.
They don't offer Camtasia?
There's Camtasia, but it doesn't give you closed captioning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's the closed captioning part that is time consuming.
But I thought you could edit the video and the audio at the same time.
That part I don't know. Yeah, because usually you have to either do it before and you read it from the script, or you do it after by listening to your own recording and then you type up the actual words, using the software. Yep. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Are there any questions about the first homework assignment that was due last week? But I'm going to answer any questions related to that one too, because the idea is we want to learn all the concepts, and because all of those things will be useful later on. No questions? We all good with all the quoted strings, single quote, double quote, escaping stuff? Yeah, okay. All right, so if there are no questions about that part, we are moving on to conditionals. So I'm gonna open up the homework assignment first. And this way, we can see, what we are expected to do. And once again, I can extend the due date, so we can do it like, I can make it due tomorrow sometime. Okay, anytime tomorrow, you can turn it in. So this way, I can go over the material today, and then you guys can go like, okay, I've been trying the whole week to get this done. I'm not very successful in doing it, but let's go ahead and talk about it today. That screen is definitely off, or are they both off?
They're both off.
Yeah, do the auto setup thing. There we go. But didn't fix this side. Well, this side is a physical problem because the projection is actually past the edge of the projection screen area, unfortunately. You can just watch one screen, I'm not going to use a dual screen setup. All right, so this is your new homework assignment. So we'll read it step by step, sentence by sentence. Please complete the following scripts below. This will require creating multiple web pages. You will turn in a single URL, however, that has all of these pages linked to it. So you're going to turn in a single page with links, hyperlinks to the individual pages. And, sorry?
This is the new one.
This is the new one.
This is due today, actually. Yeah, it's due today at 5.
Well, yeah, but I'm gonna make it extended due date to tomorrow sometime.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you have not done it yet, or it's not completely done, you have one more day to do it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Great.
Plus, I'm gonna go over the material today. I'm not gonna give you the solution today, but I'll give you the individual pieces, just so that you guys know. Okay, we can apply this technique and so on. The page has links. Can be a separate page with just these links on it, or it can be your index page. That's up to you. So we have the points distributed this way. So the include one is 6 points, but it's not just whether you use include or not, but whether you do include correctly or not. So that's that part. Random if is this part. Take the random number assignment you did last week. So I'm hoping you guys did not have any problem with that one. And add an if statement to it. If the sum of the random numbers is greater than 10, have a sentence print in blue text. If the sum is less than 10, have the sentence print in red text. If the sum equals 10, have the sentence print in green text. So do we have any questions about this particular one? No? Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Random image. So we have images, create a web page, and add the following links to the page. Okay, so are we familiar with the anchor element? Okay, so an anchor element is how you create a hyperlink. And in this case, the hyperlink is linking to a particular image. But it's not linking to an image per se. It is linked to a particular URL. So the URL that it links to looks kind of funny. Most of the time, we only have URLs consisting with a path followed by a file name, which is lab.php in this case. Sorry?
My phone heard you.
Oh. So I need to try all those, like, OK Google. Yeah, nothing paint. Okay, so this is lab.php, which is really just the name of the document or the script in this case. Yes, go ahead.
Are you recording right now?
I'm going to double check. So this is indicating I am streaming, but I need to also double check the voice is active too, because sometimes I forget one, and you usually end up with a silent movie, which is fun to watch but not very useful. Okay, so the question mark is important here because the question mark is what is separating the file name from a list of parameters. In this case, it is not a very big list. There's only one item, right? If you have multiple items, they will be separated by the ampersand symbol. But in this case, we only have one. My image is the name of what we call the parameter. Okay, you can also call these variables. Okay, the get variables, but it's also known as a parameter. Cat is the value of that. So this is how you create an URL with the name of the script and also one of the parameters pre-specified. So when you click on this link here, when you click on cat, it is going to load up this page. But at the same time, it is also going to send the get argument or the get parameter, my image, with the value of cat. Is that okay? How many people watch my really short video with tiny fonts? Okay, some people did. Okay, very good. So that's a quick and easy way for you to try out, how do I use parameters, but without even using a web browser. Because you can do all of that using PHP-CGI on the command line. So it was a really short video, right? I mean, next time I'll make sure I use a larger font. I was not aware that the font would not actually show up correctly using YouTube. You can kind of imagine how small it is on my screen. Yeah. I used to joke, if a fly lands on my screen, it will cover up like an entire word.
So I have a question.
Yep.
So are we taking the lab and making another web page link and putting it in the where the lab.php goes?
Well, let's find out. Let's read the rest of the description here. The rest of this says, create a web page and add the following links to the page. You can change the URL to reflect your actual file name address. In other words, if you are not using lab.php as the file name of this particular page, change lab.php to whatever name that you choose to use. Okay, so you can choose to use assignment to a.php. If that is what you use, then you have to change the name to assignment to a.php.
I don't think there's a reason to though. You just post it to the same page and then it displays when the page loads.
Well, we'll read the rest of the instructions. So we are just going to go.
Actually, if you
sequentially.
watch Professor Leroy's video of this, that makes it clear what she's doing.
Yeah. I post it to the same page and you get graphic variables like that.
Well, the idea is to ease into the idea of passing values to the parameters. Yes, go ahead.
So the part after a href equals is supposed to be the URL of the page that we're working on, or
Yeah.
the name of the page we're working on?
It is the page itself. Whatever page you're creating here, whatever that name is, you're supposed to put it here.
Okay, and also Mrs. Lieber's videos. So we have to go on some professors to get those. The YouTube channel.
Mhm.
Some professors. Okay.
Yep.
That's all.
Well, I think they should be linked from Canvas already too.
Yes, there.
Oh, okay. I must have missed them.
Yeah, they.
Because there's a lot of videos on there.
If
that's
I
why
click on Canvas to go to Professor Lieber's videos, it's not letting me see her videos. It's,
There's a link above.
Oh, I just didn't get far enough to find this.
Yeah, if you click the
Oh,
link
oh,
itself,
okay,
it will bring you
gotcha.
to YouTube.
okay.
Yep. There you
So
go.
we
Yeah, you
click
can put
the,
a
we
new
click
tab,
the.
in a new tab.
Okay, gotcha.
right click
Okay,
it,
that's why I
new tab,
couldn't
take
open
over.
it. I was freaking out.
You can't watch within Canvas.
Okay, gotcha.
The PHP runs when your page loads, so that's the opportunity you have to get those versions when the page loads.
Okay, well, let's read the rest of this description here. Okay, so because we haven't read the entire thing yet. So, so the assignment wants you to parse the variable myImage and write an if statement that prints a picture of a cat to the screen if the variable equals cat. In other words, you need to access the get variable myImage, compare the value of the parameter to the literal string cat, C-A-T. If they do equal to each other, then you want to, let's see, print a picture. So you want to include an img that refers to a cat. Now you can go anywhere in Google, just go find yourself the URL of a cat, okay, and just put the link over there. So the key is not to create the image, because the image you can just borrow from some other place. And I'm going to assume that you guys know how to use an img element.
Yes.
So you already know how to make that part happen. So the key really is connecting the conditional statement, which is what you're learning in this week, with something that you learned already, which is comparison that you learned from last week. So you have to be able to compare the content of a get variable with a literal string, and if it does match inside the condition of a conditional statement, which is an if statement, then you want to execute the code to crank out the img element. So your script is the one that is creating an HTML document with the img element. But which img element? Is it a cat? Is it a dog? Or is it a horse? That depends on the comparison of myImage, which is a get variable, against those particular strings, cat, dog, and horse. Okay? So if I were to write a program like this, okay, the first thing I would want to do is to check to make sure that my get variable is working. How do I do that? So this is something that I would do personally. So let me go to just my page.
Echo.
Hmm?
Echo the variable.
You could do that, but I'm going to use print and put some fancy stuff around it. Okay, I don't even need to be in public HTML. Let me turn down the lights a little bit, because that's interfering with. Is that better?
Yes.
I think that should be much better.
That's great.
One way to do this, if you don't mind a 20-second lag, is to go to the YouTube channel and watch YouTube from your own monitor. Because your YouTube has exactly the same content, right? So You can give it a try. I'm not sure how it will turn out because there will be a lag. There will be like a 20-second lag. All right, so we're going to go create a very small test file. We'll just call it myimage.php. And then we'll just use the tag here, or use the syntax to create PHP code. And I'm not going to do much. All I'm going to do here is to say print, okay? And I'll use single quotes and say parameter myImage equals to, close single quote, because whatever you start with a single quote has to end with a single quote. And you cannot refer to variables inside single quoted strings. That's what we learned from last week. Okay? So the only way I can actually display the content of a string is to use the concatenation operator, which is the dot. But in this case, my image is not like this. Okay? This won't work. Because my image is not a PHP variable. It is a get variable. Okay? So this is not going to work. What you need to do is to use underscore uppercase GAT and a square bracket and then quote my image. There you go. So the name of the parameter has to be quoted inside the square bracket, and then outside of the square bracket you have to refer to underscore get, which is what we call an associative array, because you give everything has a name and a value. Okay, or as Professor Lieber said in the video, is a key and a value. Is a key value pair. So this allows you to specify the key, and it will retrieve the value corresponding to that key. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. And I'm going to make this a little bit fancy, just so that it's easier to read. So I will put a line feed after this, because this is not an HTML document. It doesn't have HTML, the tags to open and close the document. Doesn't have head, doesn't have body, doesn't have anything. This is a regular text file. But that's exactly what I want, because I just want to test it a little bit. And the way to test this is to run php-cgi, which is in the video clip that I sent you guys a little bit earlier this week. And then I say myimage.php. And on top of this, I'm going to mention my image, which is the name of the get variable, equals to whatever value I want to put into it. Okay, cat, just like that. So you can see the output of this particular program has content type yada yada. That's kind of built into PHP. I can't really not do that. On the other hand, the actual output is parameter space my image equals to. That's inside a single quote. And then the cat is referring to the underscore get square bracket and then single quote my image. Yep.
We're doing this on PuTTY, right? Can we pulling this up on with PHP-CSI?
Yep.
Is in PuTTY, right?
Yep.
And it will work.
It will work just the same in PuTTY. Yep. And I'm using my own personal account. I'm not using any administrative account here. So whatever I do here, you should be able to do as well.
Okay.
And the best part is, this file, the way I test it like this, it doesn't even have to be in public HTML. And you're not testing it using a browser, and you're looking at the actual raw output of your script directly, not a rendering of such. Yep.
Yeah, I think the idea is just getting used to being able to pass those parameters using the links, because that's really important and a powerful tool you can use to work your program. Is passing parameters through links, because you could share those links to other people, and then so you can do a lot of things by doing that.
Yep.
And using the get method.
The get
to
variable.
access the variable through the link.
Yep.
Which is great.
But if I were to do this homework assignment, the first thing I want to check is, am I getting the correct value in the get variable? Okay, I would just print it out as a part of the HTML document, just so that I can see, okay, I'm getting the right value. Then I will go ahead and do the compare and crank out the IMG element according to that. Yes, sir.
I can't really see if there's a question mark behind the PHP in a different color, or is that blank?
You're referring to the assignment description?
No, in your line, your command line where you have the myimage.php Is that blank?
That's
Right.
blank.
Okay.
Yeah, that
So
is
we don't
blank.
have- We're not doing the same as.
That is correct. The question mark is needed in a URL because the URL has to be a contiguous piece of text. You cannot have a space in it. But in this case, this is running a command using the command line interface where you need a space to separate the different portions of the command.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I just couldn't, I was almost convincing myself that there was a red question mark there.
Nope, you're right. There's no question mark on the command line.
Okay.
All right. Are there any questions? What about comparison? How do you compare strings? How do you check whether something is cat or not? You use if. Now that's sort of right and sort of not right, okay? So you can use a condition anywhere you want to. It doesn't necessarily have to be inside the condition of a conditional statement. But at this point, yes, that would be a natural place to put it. So what I want to do next is to extend my program just a little bit. And instead of doing this, I'm going to print something else, okay? I'm going to say, is this cat, okay? So this is my variable inside PHP. And I'm going to do something like this. So tell me when this is getting a little bit too weird. And I'm going to use extra parentheses so that you can see the ordering of these things. Okay, and over here, I can keep this, okay, but then I'll also say, is this cat concatenate with $, is this cat concatenate with the end of line. Okay, so this is my modified program. So on the second line, it looks kind of weird, doesn't it? Because we have two types of equal. We have a single equal on the left-hand side, and then inside the parentheses, we have a double equal.
Well, that's okay, but I'm just trying to figure out what it's going to print. My guess is it's going to print 1.
So that's a very interesting question, isn't it? Okay, what is it going to print? So how many people want to run this just to figure out what it's going to do when I actually specify cat? Yes, okay. So we'll go ahead and do this. And the same way as before, so I specify cat as the value of my image. Press the enter key.
It's 1.
Well, okay, it doesn't like it because I specify, I forgot a semicolon. I forgot a semicolon at the end of here. There we go. Because I can see here, PHP parse error, syntax error, unexpected print on line 4. Now that can be a problem on that line, but if it's not expecting a print where, hey, clearly this is the beginning of a new line and we should be able to handle a print, it usually is telling you something that is wrong about the previous line. The previous line is not ending the way it is supposed to. Well, sure enough, I forgot that semicolon, and that's what's causing this problem. This is the kind of error message they can get from running the PHP from the command line. And I personally feel that this is really helpful because it tells you exactly where the line is, where the problem is. Okay, so we'll go ahead and run it again. And it says parameter my image equals to cat. Is this cat cis1? 1 is the same thing as true. Okay, so are we doing okay so far? What about false?
It won't show anything because that's not.
It won't show anything. Very good. Okay, I like that answer. So if I say dog, then it just says, is this cat hey, there's nothing there. Okay, it is called the null value, null. Okay, so the null, the null value, is also meaning false. Okay, so you might want to keep these things in mind because when you run the program and you want to test a condition and print out the value of an expression, this is what you're going to see. You're not going to see false. You're not going to see 0. You will see nothing. Okay? Now, there's nothing and then there's nothing. There's nothing as in the empty string, and then there's nothing as in the null value. How can you differentiate between those two?
There's no.
is null, exactly. So there's a function call in PHP called is underscore null, N-U-L-L, and you give it a variable to evaluate. It will return 1 if the variable is actually null, or it will return a null when the variable is not a null. But you can use it inside a conditional statement. Okay, and that way it's going to be useful. I'll tell you why it is useful. What if I make a typo? So here, right here, instead of using my image, I make a mistake and say my images. Okay, it's an honest typo. How many people have not made a typo mistake ever? Okay, then this argument does not apply to you.
I don't think I've ever done a program without making a typo mistake. I don't think I've ever done a program without making a typo mistake.
And okay, so typo mistakes are everywhere. But in PHP programming, there are many places to make typo mistakes, and you will get very frustrated, because now what is this program going to do? It says, hey, my image has nothing, because the underscore get square bracket mechanism is trying to access a key that doesn't exist. I did not specify my images. I specified my image. So when you try to access the value of a key that does not exist, it gives you a, guess what? A null value. Okay? So being able to test whether something is a null value is very useful, because you can at least say whether, okay, does this exist? Okay? Because if it is null, it does not exist. Yep, go ahead.
What's the difference between is null and empty?
Empty applies to empty string, or, well, let's check it out. Since you ask PHP, is empty or just empty?
Just empty.
I think one thing to stress, like when you do comparison in PHP, is you put a string in quotes and a number you don't need to put in quotes.
Okay, let's read this, okay? So there's no guesswork here. Determine whether a variable is considered to be empty. A variable is considered empty if it does not exist or its value equals false. Empty does not generate a warning if the variable does not exist. Okay? So let's go through some examples.
Wasn't Dr. Lever using an example is set or empty, one or the other? Not empty or is set?
Okay, so right here it says, so empty is, null is considered empty.
Yeah, that's what she was
It's just more encompassing.
Yes. And then is
Like
null.
is false.
Yeah, exactly. Is null would actually encompass some other things too. It's not just the null value by itself, which is just N-U-L-L spelled all uppercase. So it's really helpful to look up the documentation, because if you ask me something, I'm not going to be able to remember anything. Okay, what is empty? I'm not going to be able to remember it. There's no need to. Yes.
How do you show the line numbers in Vim? So like when
In
you got
Vim?
the error, when you got the error saying error on line 4.
Okay.
So if your program was long enough, then you need to count the lines. How to do that?
In VI, it is set NU after you type colon. So that would display line numbers.
One thing you can do is you could trim the variable, and then you can use the string length function to get the length of the variable. So then if the string length is 0, it means it's blank. So that's one thing you can do also.
Okay. There was one more hand.
Not mine.
Not yours? Okay. Must be a ghost hand.
I might have been scratching.
Okay, that's possible. Okay. All right, so getting back to the homework assignment. So do we know how to get this done? What if you use a single, yeah, go ahead.
How to done it? I use the if and else.
You use
If and else.
if
If else.
else, okay.
For else, in else I use a PHP. And if I use it's $.ts.
Okay, so what was your question?
No, I think you asked me how you done that.
Oh, okay. Now, with this one, you don't have to use else, because if something is cat, it cannot be dog or horse at the same time. So if you just check, is it cat? If it is cat, do this. Is it dog? If it is dog, do this. If it is it horse? If it is horse, do this. There's no need to use the else, because it can only match at the most one of the conditions. So there's no need to use else. Else is really useful when you're specifying conditions where they can overlap. Like multiple conditions can be true at the same time. Then the ordering becomes important, and the use of else if also becomes important, because that makes sure that only one of those branches will execute. Yep.
So if you have 3 ifs, that would mean you will have 3 comparisons. But if
You
have
will
if,
need 3 comparisons anyway, because you need to confirm.
But when you do if, else if, isn't that more efficient than doing 3 separate ifs?
It is slightly more efficient at runtime, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I had to use some else ifs because I needed to use my else so that please put the link. Otherwise, I was getting very random results. So I had to group all of my 3 choices together with else ifs.
So you have an else after the 3 comparisons.
I have
If it
if,
doesn't match any of the 3, do this.
I did if, else if, else if, else.
Okay.
So that they came together.
Mhm.
They're all stacked. Click a link through one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I can see how that can be important. But okay, I see. Because you need else for the default. What if it doesn't match one of those things? All right. You can also use is null, as a condition to catch the last case. All right, so let's see here. A link if the user has not clicked the link with the variables in it. The first time the page loads. So you have to be able to differentiate whether it is already a click or whether this is before the first click. So in other words, you have to check to see if my image doesn't match the cat, the dog, or the horse, what are you going to do? And that's where the else comes in handy of a else if chain. Yep. So is this okay? Yep.
So it sounds like because I had originally did if basically what Diane just said, so that would not have worked out, right? You have to have it.
Right. It can work, but it takes a lot more work to make that logic work. Because then you need, if it is a cat, do this. If it's a dog, do this. If it's a horse, do this. Then you need another if to say, if it's not a cat, and it is not a dog, and it's not a horse, do that. So you end up with even more complex logic. But it can be emulated, with the more complex logic. All right, the next section talks about modulus, and you're supposed to create a page with the following links. Parse the get variable for the number, create a second variable that is a number between 1 and 10, multiply, okay. Carol is supposed to be an English major, but that doesn't say anything about typing. Typing is a whole different thing. So multiply the random number by whatever number is in the get variable you just parsed. Write an if that first checks whether the number exists is set, okay, which is also related to is null, because if something is null, it means it's not set. But is set can be used. If a number is not set, print the sentence, please click the link. If the number is in fact set, in other words, there is such a variable, write a statement that checks if the new number, the one you got by multiplying the 2 variables together, is odd or even using the modulus operator. If the number is odd, print the number 15 is odd, or whatever the number is supposed to be is odd in red. If the number is even, print the number blah 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 is even in blue. All right, so are there any questions about this one? No questions? This one's good? The modulus operator is actually very useful. Okay, we're only using it to check whether something is even or odd, but it can also have many other applications. So we'll see whether we'll get back to modulus or not later on. The include part is confusing, and that's what I was sending out earlier today. I sent an announcement to kind of help clarify what this is about. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to download the link here. I'm not sure whether I have the tool to unzip it. No, I don't. Okay. Well, this one is it's a little bit confusing. Okay, I can see how.
Well, it's confusing when you read the description, but if you look at the pages, it's obvious what she wants you to do. Because the pages are marked, here to here to here to here.
You really have to clean it up a little bit to make it fit together, right?
Well, I'm trying to see if I can do this. Vim div.
It took me a couple tries.
Okay, would that work?
Oh, Jesus.
This is a cool little tool called Vim div. Okay, and what it really excels at doing is it can display different files and show you the common and the different parts, and it compares all of these files. So you don't have to use this tool. I'm just saying that such a tool exists. So you can actually compare and notice where it is different between the files and where they are the same between the files. Okay, obviously you can do this by hand as well. But anyway, the homework assignment is asking you to analyze these 3 pages. Okay, so we'll take a look manually one by one. Page 1 looks like this. Now this is a complete HTML document. Okay, you can see that it has got the HTML, the head, the body. It has got the whole 9 yards. Okay, and the same thing with HTML2 doesn't have the entire thing, I think. HTML2, oops, page2.html. Oh, it has the entire thing too. And then the same thing applies to page 3. It is also an entire HTML document. So what the assignment is about is look at the 3 pages, extract the common part into a PHP script. Okay? No?
Oh, make that its own PHP file or HTML file. The common parts.
Right.
Yeah. You don't want those in the script.
Looking at the files.
It's the difference that you want in the script.
You go into
The difference you want to put into different files.
Yeah, but
Okay, I'm confused.
the PHP in the main page, current page, is going to have the common HTML. So
Okay.
current page PHP is going to have everything that's common.
The PHP script has everything that is common.
The current page.php file
Yeah.
is going to have everything that's not a script necessarily, that's just a page.
That's a script. Anything that ends with PHP is a script.
Okay, I always consider anything that has bracket, question mark, PHP, question mark, bracket, that's the script, and everything else is just a file.
Okay, I see. So you're referring to the code part of a script as opposed to the verbatim part of a script. But the file itself, PHP is a script. Anything that ends with PHP is a script. The PHP engine will be able to read it and crank out something. Now, if you don't have the angle bracket, question mark PHP, and then the question mark and close angle bracket, if you don't have that, that simply means the PHP engine has nothing to do. It would just read whatever content is specified and just print it out verbatim. So but it will still be a script because it is still processed by the PHP engine. So I know it's just terminology, but
So how do you distinguish when you have, on what term would you use for the part that has the angle brackets?
the code.
So you would call that.
Those are the sections of PHP code inside a PHP script file.
Okay.
So the file itself is a script, but inside the file, when you have those sections of code, you just call those sections of PHP code.
I'll go with that.
Okay. I don't want to split hair, for the sake of splitting hair, but I think the terminology is kind of important, so that when I talk about what a script is, I'm referring to the file itself. When we refer to the sections of code, then we just call a section of code inside the PHP script.
Okay. The question is all the other code inside the PHP script code also? The ones that aren't in the angle bracket?
The ones that are not in angle brackets.
Is that code also?
That's not code. That is just HTML content. Because it doesn't trigger the PHP engine to do anything.
Okay, that's where I need to get that clarification.
Okay.
So it's HTML content and code. It's the two terms.
Right. So those are the two kinds of stuff inside the PHP file. Yep.
Okay, so my question is, we're taking the HTML files and putting it into a PHP file, correct?
Right. So that part is easy. Okay. So I can give you a few pointers of how to do this. Okay. So let's go ahead. So my approach to do this. Now you don't have to do it this way because I know you guys may not be comfortable with command line commands. But CP is just copy. Okay. So you can do it using. You can use it. You can use CP if you use PuTTY, or if you use WinSCP, just make a copy of the file and then put it back onto the server. Okay. So here's what I would do. So current.
No. You don't have to move the files to anywhere. You could just include the HTML file directly in your PHP document. So you could just put include page 2, page 3 at the end of
Yeah,
page
but
1,
then you won't be.
and it makes a
But that's not what is.
You have to clean it up a little bit.
But it is not what the question is asking. The question is asking that you move all the comment part to create current page.php.
Well, the objective is to make a working page with all documents in it. So what you do is you could use include page 2, page 3 at the end of page 1.
But not the way page 1, page 2, page 3 are currently in.
Well, if you clean up page 2 and page 3 to fit into page 1, you can use the include, and it all works together in the same page. So you're basically adding rows to the table with the include, and it makes it all one page. So I thought that was the purpose.
But that's not the assignment. The assignment is you have the top portion and the bottom portion the same.
Well, I understand.
And then you're switching the middle portion, 1, 2, 3.
Well, I understand. I mean, you're given an objective. It's up to you to figure out how to do it. You know what I'm saying? There's
Well,
different ways.
I'm going to grade according to the description here. So anything that conflicts with the description of what we are reading here is not going to get full points. Would that be fair?
Well, yeah, you have to read the objective and meet the objective. How you
Okay.
get there.
Because right here it says, you will notice that the head and foot areas of all 3 pages are identical. Only the main content area changed from one page to the next. And then it says pull the files apart. Now, when it says pull the files apart, I would assume it is referring to the HTML files and not the graphics file. It makes no sense to pull the graphics folder and files in the graphics folder in multiple parts. So pull the files apart into the basic components: head, foot, and 3 content area. So the head will be common, the foot will be common, and then the content area is where the differences are. Yep.
That's the head and foot being all equal. The head is almost true, except on page 1 there's an extra width equals 28 pixels.
You can probably ignore that.
Okay.
You can probably ignore that.
It makes a difference.
Yep. So, and then the instruction says, okay, then put them together using the include command. So the them, okay, the way I read this is them is referring to the basic components. So you have 5 basic components: head, foot, content 1, content 2, content 3. Is that okay? And you want to do that using the include command. So that means whatever file is specifying the head, you just say include head.html or however you want to call that. At the end of your PHP file or PHP script, you would do a include foot.html. For the static part that doesn't change, that is common to all 3 original page whatever .html files. So in the inside, then you get to select only one of the 3 content. So content 1, content 2, content 3 now depends on the actual logic.
Okay, so we get the page 1, 2, and 3. We
Mhm.
break them out into the portions: head, the body, and the footer.
Mhm.
Then we make those into separate HTML for each part, right? And then
Mhm.
we put include the header for header, and then include body from each page 1, 2, and 3, and
Right.
then finish up with the footer that is the same on all across the board, correct?
Yep, I think that was the intention. Let me try this and see if it works. This works really well with my other classes, so I suspect it will work well in this class too.
And when you do include it, it puts it directly in the document. So
Huh?
the challenge is when you do include it, puts the HTML directly in the document. So the
Yeah.
challenge is getting it to fit within the HTML that's already on the page to make it all
Yes.
go together.
Yep.
So,
Okay. So I'm gonna. Oh, this is the wrong one. Okay, where's my? I'm very tempted to use the whiteboard, but if I use the whiteboard, it's not going to be recorded, right? So I got a solution. I got a solution. I just need a minute or so to set this up.
So basically, you're just adding rows to the table with the new HTML. So there's a new table, you use include, rows, and it puts the
There are no tables.
There's no table.
the page is a table actually. The page 1 is a table.
Well, that is the material. So
That's the content. You pull the entire content in using a single include.
Well, I finished the assignment by adding rows to the table.
this is basically copy statement. You're copying it.
That's the way I do it. That's the flexible thing about PHP is you can use it to add rows to tables. You can't do that in JavaScript. You have to use a different way. But PHP is really good for that.
Okay, so let me see if this works. Multimedia, go to VLC. VLC is great for playing movies, but it's also great for this purpose. Because now I can look at a document camera. Oh, the lighting is really bad.
Watch your own light so we can see.
Yeah, but then it will wash out the screen. What I really need is a light only for this area.
Use your phone flashlight.
Well, I got just the thing.
He's prepared.
And let's see, I need a longer cable.
Professor Fox, he has a line.
Say again?
Professor Fox, he has a line.
Yeah, I know, in room 121, but I cannot move that light over here. Okay. Ah, I got it. Okay, let me close this first because I have to unplug my my USB thingy. Okay.
You can use it for like validation too. Like if someone's logged in, you can say include this page logged out.
Well, include is a very simple mechanism. It's just like whatever is in that content, stick it here.
I use require usually. It's the same. I don't see a difference between using require and include. Works the same.
Have you looked it up?
I've always used require. This class they use include. I don't see a difference.
Okay. I'm gonna have to MacGyver things a little bit here. Excuse my use of cultural icon terms.
But it's handy to do that.
Scotch tapes? Oh yeah.
I was talking about using include.
He's just stuck on it.
Determine what page to show, depending if the user's logged in or logged out.
I knew what he was talking about. I was just pulling his leg.
You do that in JavaScript too. You pass PHP. parameters to JavaScript.
Okay. Let's see whether this works. Take two. Because this is a useful tool, I can do things that I cannot just type. Because I want to give you a clue of how to work on this one, but I don't want to give you the actual code. Oh, right, I need to plug in, oh. Okay. USB hub, and then the camera, and then the LED light. There we go. Okay. So let's do it one more time. Capture device. Nope, doesn't like that. Cannot find my camera. Okay, come on, do it one more time. There we go. See? Works. So just have to do some cable management here. And cable is in the way. Get it out of the way. Here we go. Okay. So, focus. How's that? Now we just need a pencil. There we go. All right. So we got page 1. So instead of using 3 pages, I'm going to use just 2, but you can see how the logic applies to 3 pages. Okay. So when you have page 1, page 2, these are the original page 1, page 2 .html documents. So what you do is you look at the content of these files. Okay. Other than the pixel difference, at the top of one of the pages, they have the same head. You will identify, certain sections that is common between the 2 pages as the beginning of these 2 pages. You would also identify the ending of these 2 pages would also be the same. Is that okay?
Yes.
So what you do is then look at the part that is different, which is the middle part, the content. Is that okay? So out of these 2 files, create 4 smaller files. Okay? Create 1 smaller file for this part, which is the same as that one. Okay, so these 2 will merge to 1 single file. For the sake of just naming, I'm just going to call this head.html. Okay, and then this part here is also common. We can call this tail.html. Is that okay? So the part that is in the middle that is different, that you have to either rename, or I guess you can use page 1 again, page 1, page 2, page 3 again, because then you will be destroying the original page 1, page 2, page 3, which I think it may not be a good idea, but if you feel confident that
Can you put body 1, body 2, body 3?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. So they just have to be different.
Okay.
So you can say this is body1.html, this is body2.html, and there'll be another one for the 3rd file.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So that means in your HTML script, okay, in the code section of your HTML script, you will just unconditionally say include head.html, because that part you need anyway. You will also unconditionally at the end of your PHP script include tail.html, because that part you need also, regardless of which part of the content you are actually trying to refer to. Does that make any sense? So when you look at the actual HTML document, I'm going to scroll this up a little bit. So your PHP file is going to have 1 include to bring in the head. It will have another include to bring in the tail. So this way, it will have a very consistent look regardless of which link you click. Okay? In the middle, which is this part here. This is in your PHP file, by the way, your PHP script. So in the middle is where you put your conditional statement or conditional statements. So that you would check, using a particular parameter in the URL, you would check the value of that parameter in order to determine, should I bring in body 1, should I bring in body 2, or should I bring in body 3? Okay? There are two reasons to bring in body 1, by the way. One is it is specified because there's the get variable indicating I want the first one. But in the absence of anything, of any get variable, you also want to bring in the first page. That is the default. Okay, according to what I read in the documentation, that is the default.
Yeah, and she has done this many ways in her videos, more than
Yep.
one way to accomplish this.
Right. So the idea is, to utilize conditional statements. So there are two ways, that she demonstrated here. This one just makes use of 3 different get variables. But depending on which one is clicked, only one of them is going to have the value yes in it. So you will have to check, does trigger 1 have a value of yes? If so, bring in body 1. Else, if trigger 2 is yes, bring in body 2. Else, if trigger 3 is yes, then you bring in the third one. Is that making any sense? And then there's one extra else. What if none of trigger 1, trigger 2, or trigger 3 is yes? Bring in body 1. That is part of the document. That's part of the specification of the homework. Is that okay?
Yeah, and she did it like 2, 3 else, which would be one and the other thing. Or the very first one, 1, or not is set.
Yep.
And then 2 and 3.
There are many ways to do it. Okay. And then the second way is to have one single trigger, but the trigger itself doesn't just have yes or no particular value. It has a number. So if it is 1, bring in page 1. If it is 2, bring in page 2. If it's 3, bring in page 3. If it is absent, bring in page 1.
So the page 1 is meaning that we're pulling the body, okay.
Yep, so page 1 is bringing in this one.
Okay.
Yep.
I gotcha. Because I was kind of confused on how to break it up and
Okay.
do stuff like that, but I got it now.
All right, excellent. We're turning this into an English class. Yep.
So, are we going to be altering the HTML pages or creating more pages?
That's up to you. So getting back to the document camera here, your original page 1, page 2, page 3 have too much stuff and a lot of overlap. So what we are doing is we are creating a head file which only consists of the beginning of all 3 files that is common. A tail file which is consisting of the common ending part of all 3 files. And then we are also either change the original page 1, page 2, page 3, so that you cut out the top and the end, or you create 3 files, body 1, body 2, body 3, that only consist of the middle part of page 1, page 2, and page 3. So it's up to you to decide which way you want to go, but choose one of the 2 ways to do it. Okay?
So we might be creating more files.
We are going to create more files, because for certain you're creating head and tail.html. Now, whether you want to edit in place and change page 1, page 2, page 3, or you create body 1, body 2, body 3, in addition to the files that are provided to you, that is up to you. Because the assignment instruction did not indicate which way. It simply says, the files, there are 5 parts, and the 5 parts have to be stored in 5 individual component files. But it didn't say whether you should or should not modify the original files. Is that okay? Yeah. All right, cool. All right, and that's the end of the whole homework assignment. So are there any questions related to this homework assignment? Because if not, I will try to catch up in time and start on the next one. Okay? Now once again, yes, go ahead.
Just wondering if there's any reason we've been being taught to do all this without the use of curly brackets, because those really prevent a lot of glitches down the line. And I think it's a really good habit to have.
The curly.
Like to encase, like let's say you have an if statement, but to encase the behavior of the if statement in curly brackets.
Yeah, in her notes, she also has.
I always do.
Oh, weird. I guess it just didn't bring it. I guess it's just because I tried to do it without reading the notes.
Okay.
But I was going based off of what you had done on the screen more than her notes.
Okay.
So that's why I questioned it. If the content's somewhere, then I'm not really.
Well, I don't have a single conditional statement here, so.
Well, no, I meant more yesterday. But then again, you weren't doing conditional statements.
Yeah, I was
time.
not.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so here's a tip. Okay, now whether you want to use this tip or not is entirely up to you. So I'm going to write a new script here. I'm going to say, I don't know, test1.php. Okay. And this is one thing that I always do is when I open a tag or open an element, I always close it right away. And then I go back in and backfill the content. The reason why I do this is because if I don't do this, I usually will forget to close it. But then I will have like 20 gazillion elements that are also open and not closed. Okay, it makes it very difficult to close, to find out which one is supposed to close where. So I just close it right away and then I go back and insert the content. But I do the same thing with conditional statements. Okay, so when I have conditional statements, I would just do this without even thinking I'm going to do this. In other words, I type out the skeletal structure of a conditional statement first, with the if, the else, the condition, an area to put the then statements, an area to put all the else statements. Then I go back and say, oh, what condition am I talking about? Backfill that. Okay? What am I supposed to do when the condition is true? Backfill that. What am I supposed to do when the condition is false? Maybe nothing. Leave it empty. There's nothing wrong with leaving an else block completely empty. It takes up what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Maybe 13 to 14 characters. Your ISP is not going to miss that. Okay? So, but it does give you a place to put something in case you say, oops, I forgot. There's something I want to do when the condition is false. Now you have the right place to put it. So this technique is useful when you only have a simple program, but it makes it even more useful when you have complex logic. In other words, what if you have a conditional statement inside another conditional statement? Oops. The indentation is consistent. When you go back and backfill, then you can change the indentation. So this is just my technique to make sure that my program looks clean, the indentation is all correct, every open has a close, and so on and so forth. Okay, how you want to type your program is entirely up to you. If you like to type your program from the end up to the beginning, hey, that's your choice. If it works for you, it's okay. All right? Any other questions? Oh, I'm going to show you a bug that is really cool. Okay? Every bug that somebody else is stepping on is cool to you. So I'm going to put something here and say if underscore get, okay, this may not work. I'm going to do it in a slightly different way. So I'm going to say cat equals to cat. Okay. Now the reason why I don't want to use the literal string cat all the time is because I can have a typo. So one time I might type it as KAT and not CAT. Then I would have a problem because it won't be matching the strings consistent. But if I use a variable, I'm not sure whether PHP has the tool to do it. But if I have a tool to make sure that this is a variable that already exists, that would be good because I can make sure that I'm always referring to cat the variable, not the literal string. But that part depends on what PHP can do. So I can now compare cat, which is the string that I have just defined a little bit earlier, but instead of 2 equal symbol, I use 1. So my question to you is, what is this going to do? Comparison is supposed to be equal.
Right.
What is single equal? What does that do? Assignment. Very good. Okay. So assignment says, what is assignment doing? Assignment says evaluate the right hand side first,
Right.
and then change the left hand side to whatever the left hand side is.
So,
Well, excuse me, the other way around. Evaluate the right hand side and then change the left hand side to whatever the right hand side value is. Okay. Do you think it will work inside a place where a condition is expected?
it will work if my
Yes,
image,
it will work.
If my image comes as 1 or null, it will work.
Yes. So this will actually work to change cat. But at the same time is the condition. Now remember, in a condition of a conditional statement, it is supposed to be either true or false. So they can direct you to the then branch or the else branch, right? The question is it going to divert you to one of these two branches too?
No, it always makes sense.
It is always a true. Okay, well, it depends on what you're assigning to the variable.
To
Okay,
my
if you're assigning false to the variable,
Okay.
the whole assignment itself is considered false. Okay.
So right now actually it will go to false, right? Because we don't have anything down in line.
Okay, so let's check it. Let's complete this program, and we'll have some fun with this one. Okay, so we'll say, I don't know.
It is okay.
My image is dot underscore get my image, and then we'll make it nice and end with a new line. And I'm missing something, otherwise it wouldn't be using that color. Oh, double quote, there we go. And I would even go here and say, this is the then branch, this is the else branch, okay? And I would use another print statement and say, cat is cat, okay? Well, just so that I know what cat is at that point. Is that okay? All right. Let's go ahead and run this program. PHP-CGI, my image equals to, what do you want? Do you want to try it with cat first or not cat?
Okay.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, it complains 404 not found. Oh, that's because I forgot to specify the file name. test1.php. There we go. Oh, syntax error on line 5. Okay, let's fix that. On line 5, it says I'm missing a colon.
Are you missing a dollar sign in front of the logo?
Oh yeah, there we go. Thank you. The other way.
Yeah.
And also in the conditional.
Ah. There we go. Okay, still complaining, unexpected colon on line 5.
That should be a semicolon, not should be a semicolon at the end of those two.
Oh, right. Okay, gotcha.
See, you're testing us. How are we reading the material?
Okay. That's not surprising, right? After all, the get variable is cat. So it says the get variable is cat, and then the variable itself is cat, which is a constant string. It's supposed to be a constant string, right? Everything seems to work. Let's try dog, okay? Uh-oh. We're still in the then branch. Okay, so that's the first flag that says something is not right. Okay, because supposedly I'm trying to compare whether the get variable is cat or not. Well, cat is not dog, right? But then it prints and say that, no, you got it right. The get variable is in fact dog. But cat is dog now. The variable cat became dog. The string dog. That's because, sorry, go ahead.
What if you passed in 0?
What if I
Passed in my image equals 0.
It wouldn't. I don't think it would change a single thing. Oh, let's go to else because you're assigning that and the result of the assignment is false in that case. Okay, very
That
good.
will be a string, yeah?
Hmm?
That will be a string 0.
I'm not sure about
Because
that part.
everything is a string on that.
Because when you compare, it depends on what each side is. Because remember, PHP has what do they call this thing that it would change the type automatically?
Custody?
No, that's a type mangling. Type mangling is the word. It's because it would automatically do type mangling, but it does prefer numerical values. If one side is a numerical value, it would change the other side to a numerical value first before the comparison occurs.
Yeah, because the image itself was string.
But it is still wrong because cat is 0. So from here on, the variable in PHP, $cat, is no longer the string cat. It is now 0. Okay? So this is a very common mistake that people would make, including myself, is instead of using double equal for comparison, using a single equal, which is assignment. And it is weird, okay, that it seems like it's weird that you can do an assignment inside a condition, but this is actually a feature, quote-unquote feature, in C and C++ where PHP borrowed many of its constructs. So, that's why, you have to be careful because it let you do stuff like that. All right,
Yeah,
any questions?
it's a very common mistake because other languages let you compare it with an equal sign, not equal. So if you come from those languages, you tend
Yes.
to make this mistake.
Oh yeah, big time too. And when this one bites, it bites big time too because you wouldn't expect to have a problem in the condition in the comparison. Yep.
It's a lot easier for me to keep my notes organized when they're just in picture format. So would you mind adding the second equals so I can take a picture of it? Otherwise, I'm probably not going to remember to check my notes.
So it should be double equal. So you want me to add
Yeah.
one more here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
That
So.
will take the fun out of the exercise.
But as I said, it is always nice. It's always fun when it's somebody else's bug.
Yeah.
You guys are just observing, getting entertained, as opposed to, oh man, this is my bug, and my boss tells me that this is due. I got to get this done by tomorrow. Then it's not as much fun anymore. But if it's your professor making that mistake, it's like, ha, look at that.
See, the thing is, we can only learn by making the mistakes.
Yes, and I have made many mistakes over 30 years.
All of us have.
Well, especially in coding, okay? So are we ready to move on to loops?
Sure.
All right. Okay, so let's go do some loops here. So I'm gonna write one loop one.php. And you can see that I don't even bother with actual HTML documents because I just want to illustrate how to use specific language constructs in PHP. What you want it to crank out is entirely up to you. Okay, so if you wanted to crank out HTML documents, fine. Okay, if you just want to print out your certain statements, that's good too. So we'll go ahead and start with while. Okay, this word. Okay, it is the same thing as long as. Okay, if you're having a problem remembering what while really means, it is the same thing as long as. Okay, so as long as you remember that, then we can do something like this. I like to use I as an index variable. It's just traditional in other types of programming. And we start with a 0, and I can say as long as I is less than 3. Okay, we'll go ahead and do this. The indentation is not working correctly. Just doesn't like it. Okay. So are there any questions I can answer back there? No? Okay. So I will show you one of my very favorite mistakes. Okay, so right off the bat, I'm going to show you this one. I is, $i \n, just like that. That's my favorite mistake. I forget to increment the index.
This is why I say I know your mistake. This I've made it hundreds of times.
Yep. So, but for people who do not program a whole lot, have never seen this kind of mistake, what is this code going to do? It's looping, but it's looping forever, right?
Yes.
Because I got assigned a value of 3, excuse me, 0, and while is the same thing as long as. So we are basically saying, as long as I is less than 3, print I is blah, blah, blah. And what do you think it's going to do after printing I is 0? It goes straight back to the condition and check again and say, is I less than 3? Guess what? I is still 0. Of course, it is less than 3. So keep doing this forever. It will just print an infinite number of I is 0.
And you're running around asking, how do I break this thing? How do I break this thing?
How do I make it stop, right? That would be the next question, is how do I make it stop? So I'm going to show you what happens when we run this program, okay? Because you can see it when you are running from the command line. But if this is your actual web script and you're trying to run the web script itself, you won't see anything. Because the page is never finished. Okay? And that's another reason why sometimes it is really helpful to run your script using the command line interface instead of running it through your browser. Because this is the raw output. You can actually see the raw output in this case. So we'll say PHP, since I don't have any CGI variables in this case, PHP is fine. loop1.php, and there we go. It keeps going and going and going. And obviously the question is, how do I make it stop?
Control-C.
Control-C, very good. So Control-C is going to make it stop. Okay, so the program didn't work because I forgot to change the value of I. So this is where we go in here and go like, okay, I gets I plus 1 to increment. So now, what values is it going to print? I is 0, I is 1, I is 2. That's it. Very good. Because by the time I becomes 3, it goes back and checks the condition. 3 is less than 3 is false. It gets out of the loop. So it's not going to print I is 3. It will only print I is 2. That's the last line it's going to print. Okay? But when I claim something is going to work in a certain way, what do you say?
Show me.
Show me. Exactly. Prove it. Show me. Oops. That's another VI. Let's run it. There we go. 0, 1, 2. That's it. Are we doing okay so far with this stuff? Okay? So that really brings us to the for loop. Okay? Because a for loop is really a glorified while loop. Okay? So I'm going to run another loop. I'll do it in the same program so you can compare and contrast the two loops here. So I have, let's use J here, okay? Just so that they're slightly different. So this is for loop. And a for loop has a body, just like a while loop does. And inside here, I'm going to use the same thing, except it's J this time. Okay?
Why are you writing
Oh.
this?
Nope, I don't want. It's a for loop. So a for loop, inside the parentheses, there are 3 parts. How do you name or how do you call those 3 parts? Yep, so the 3 parts are called initialization, which occurs once before you get into the loop, even the first time. So you have initialization, then you have the condition to stay in the loop. So the condition has to be true to stay in the loop. That's the second part. The last part is called what we call post operation, which is performed after each iteration. Okay, so let me say that one more time. Initialization, stay in loop condition, and post operation. Okay, now there might be some other names for those things, but the meaning, they do not change. So in this case, the initialization is this part here. So we can now get rid of that and put it here. J gets initialized to 0. You use the semicolon to separate the parts. To stay in the loop, I want j to continue to be less than 3. So this is the stay in loop condition. And then the last part is the increment. You can use plus plus if you want to, which is the same thing as equals j plus 1. Okay, so it's the same thing. So these two loops are functionally identical. In other words, they do exactly the same thing. It's just that when you look at the first loop, the initialization is its own statement. The stay in loop condition is kind of clear, but the post operation is on its own too. If you miss one of those things, it's really hard to notice. Okay, are there any questions back there I can answer? Yes? No? Okay. So, but with a for loop, it makes you think about, oh, what am I supposed to initialize? When do I stay in the loop? And what should I do after each iteration? It makes you think about those three things because those are the three parts that you have to fill in inside the parentheses. Okay? But it works only when you decide to use that particular way of thinking. Because somebody can always go to a for loop and say, oh, I can move this over here. In other words, I'm defeating the whole purpose of having a for loop because I am putting all of these components outside of the parentheses now. Is that valid in terms of syntax? 100%. Is it a good idea?
No.
Nope, because I just defeated the whole purpose of using a for loop. Okay? So are there any questions about a regular for loop? Now, a regular for loop is exceptionally well suited when you have indexes to go through. Okay? I need this number to go from this value to that value and increment by 1 or whatever amount for each iteration. In your homework assignment, there's exactly one place where you should use a for loop or while loop. Okay? But I recommend using a for loop. What about for each? For each is also a kind of loop, but it's very, very handy when you need to go through all the elements inside a particular array. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at for each. But before we do that, let's go ahead and undo all the stupid changes, put it back into this shape, and run the program just to make sure that it does work the way it is supposed to. Yep, it's all good. All right. So I'm going to write another program called array.php. Okay. Oops. There we go. So this time I'm going to use a particular array. I'll just call this array1. Okay, really boring name, and it is an array with the following elements. Okay, we'll have tag, George. Let's see. Edmund. Let me see. Gary. Okay. All right. So if you just need to be able to go through every single one of these elements inside the array, print it out and stuff like that, now certainly you can use an array. Okay. You can use a for loop, control the index so it goes from 0 to 3 in this case, and then just print out that particular element. But you can also use something that's even more convenient. So I'm going to use the first approach first. Okay, so I would use for, and then $i is the indexing variable. So it would start with 0. I has to be less than the number of elements inside an array. And what would that be?
4.
No. How do you know the number of elements inside an array?
Length of.
Okay. So let's check. Okay. Length of array. Count all elements in an array or something in an object. Okay, sounds like what we want. Count all elements in an array or something in an object. So count should work. Okay. So we go back here and say count the number of things in array 1, and then we have $i plus plus. Okay. So the first thing some people may notice is, oh, but shouldn't that be less than or equal to instead of less than?
No, because the index is starting at 0, so it has to be less.
Exactly. So the indexes start with 0, so it has to end with the number of items in the array minus 1. If you have 4 items, the index of the last item is 3. Okay, and that's why I want to stay in the loop only if I is less than the number of items in the array. Okay, if I is the number of elements in the array, it's time to get out of the loop. Yep.
If you were using subscript, would you start at 1 or you start at 0?
You start with 0. Okay, so we'll go ahead and check this out. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll use a little print statement here. Now, what is the difference between print and echo? I actually looked that up.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, there's one difference.
No.
One returns a value, the other one does not. Print actually returns a value. Echo does not. That's the only difference between the two. So that little difference allows you to use print where echo cannot go. But if we're using it in this particular context, it really doesn't matter.
But we
Yeah.
could use both though.
Yeah, in this context, you can use both. You can use either. Okay. So we say print. So I want to print both the index and also the item at that particular index. Okay. So the first one is, let me see, index $I as a value of. And the interesting thing is you can actually do array indexing like this inside double quotes. Or at least I've seen it happen.
Well, it seems logical.
Well, we'll give it a try. What is the worst thing that can happen? That thing's going to blow up, right? Nobody's going to get hurt. Nobody's going to, no property is going to be damaged. So what are we going to do? We'll run it. We'll give it a try. The fact that it has, it is appearing in red is kind of an alarming thing. It's like, my editor thinks, this may not work. But I'm not convinced, so I'm going to give it a try. So PHP array.php, it does work. So you can see how index 0, or the element 0 of the array, has a value of tag, and then the next one is George, then Edmund, and then Gary. Okay, I think I have just done a portion of your homework assignment.
Thank you.
But what if you don't care about the index? Now, if you don't care about the index,
the homework assignment to say you instead of 0, you can.
I think Carol may not be happy about that. It's like, Tag, what are you doing to my class? Okay, so we're going to do another one, okay? And this one is not going to use a for loop. Instead, it's going to use a for each loop, okay? Now, this is a syntax highlighting editor. So whenever I use a keyword that is a valid statement in PHP, it changes color. Okay, it's not white or gray anymore. It is now in yellow. Okay, so that's a good sign. When you use for each, you have to specify the array first. So you basically specify array 1 first, and then you specify the word as, and then you use a new variable. Okay, may I answer your question? Because if I can hear you, so can the rest of the class. So that may be distracting to the rest of the class. Okay, now on the other hand, if your question relates to the class, I would like to hear that, because the rest of the class wants that too. So I use the word item or element because it is going to populate a particular element into item for each iteration of the loop. And you can internally keep track of which one has been seen already and which one has not been seen. So this is really, really nice. If you don't need the index, this is the best way to go through everything in an array. So we say print an item of the array is item, just like that. Okay? Now, is it going to print everything in that particular order? I don't think there's a guarantee, Okay, I have to read the actual documentation to find out whether the ordering is following exactly the same order as what you put into the array. But I know for sure that it will print out every single one. All right, so let's go ahead and give this a try. PHP array2.php. There we go. So this is another loop structure that will allow you to go through every single thing within an array, but without an explicit index to specify, oh, which one are we talking about?
For each.
For each, yeah. Yeah, so for each is a statement type that only works to go through everything in an array. It saves you the trouble of having to keep track of the index and also do the compare and all kinds of stuff like that.
So,
yeah, in first and then you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Can the item again was the item treat the variable as item or is the item everyone has item to item?
The previous program works the same way.
I know, but this one was at the full a regular tool. I equals 0, I understand, and then item. But in this for each kind of feature, so everyone has item.
They are different in the sense that a for loop is controlling the index, which goes from 0 to 3 in the previous program. But in the case of a for each loop, it has no index. There's no variable I, right? So internally, the for each loop is capable of knowing or tracking which element of the array has been copied to item and has gone through the iteration, and it knows which one has not gone through the loop yet.
So you have to say you have the variable item, just changing the variable. You have a variable as an item.
Right, in the case of a for each, yes. So in the case of a for each, yeah, go ahead.
How it knows which item is already retrieved?
It is internally tracked. I have no idea. So outside of the construct, there's no way for me to write any code to figure out which item has been used already in this loop.
So it is possible that sometimes it just retrieve in reverse order or just randomly. Is that possible?
I don't know about the ordering, but I think with a straight array, it always goes from the beginning to the end. Now, there's one thing you have to watch out for when you use for each. If you're using for each, do not change the content of the array inside the for each loop, especially adding new elements to the array, because that will mess it up. Because there's some kind of internal variable that we cannot see or nor control that is keeping track. Okay, this is the beginning of the array. I've gone through this one. I've gone through this one. And here's your code saying, oh, I'm going to insert a new element right here, shifting everything over by one on the other side. That's going to mess up the internal tracking mechanism. So if you use for each, do not change the array. Okay? If you just need to examine elements of an array, this is great. If you potentially might need to change the array by changing the values of each element, inserting new items and stuff like that, it is probably a better idea to use a for loop.
So, do you use it like for searches? Like if you were searching a specific member, like you were looking for George in this array.
Okay.
So will you use this kind of?
If you're searching, you might be able to use the square bracket notation too. I'm not 100% sure, but there might be a way to do a search quickly.
In other languages, there's like search all versus search, and this is like search all, where you're doing a binary search.
So when I have a question like that, I'm going to cheat and ask Professor Google.
Okay.
So you have PHP search array. So search an array for a given value and return the first occurrence. It has a particular function just to do that. So array search would do it for you. Search the array for a given value and returns the first corresponding key if successful.
Okay.
So it looks like it only works in key value pairs, but I'm not sure whether it will work in this case.
And what I was wondering was, when you did the for each, and then you printed each. If
Well,
you could have
but
in
for
there like
each
an
is
if
not
statement,
okay.
if you could have like an if statement in there
Okay.
and saying if my item equals George.
Okay, so let me repeat the question because I don't think the mic can record what you said. Okay, so the question is, what if you want to search for a particular thing in an array, and what would be the best structure to do it? I would say a for loop, not a for each. Okay, because there's no way to stop a for each early. Even if the first item of the array is the one item that you're looking for, it has to go through every single one. But if you use a for loop, you can change the condition. So you can say, if I have seen everything in the array and I still haven't found what I'm looking for, get out of the loop, okay? Because there's nothing else to do. On the other hand, if I have seen, if this is what I'm looking for, get out of the loop too. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So,
For loop will be faster than. For loop will be faster, yeah?
yes, for loop will be faster, not only faster, but it is also more intuitive in this case. At least to me, it is more intuitive. So I'm going to give you this example. It's a little bit advanced, so if you don't get this one, don't worry about it, okay? But I do want to kind of talk about this one. I will copy this to array3.php. Oops. CP array1. Oh, it's just array. There's no array1. There we go. Okay. So with this one, I'm going to do a search. And, okay, I'm going to look for a key. And the key is just $get bracket key. In other words, I'm passing this in as a part of the URL. Okay, that makes sense, right? Because you probably have a form where you have a text field and you say, okay, I want to look for items, with this name. Okay, so it is not uncommon that you would use a get parameter to specify what you're looking for. So in here, I would still need this, okay? Because if I is reaching the end of the array, I should get out anyway. But I also have another way to get out. Now ampersand is conjunction or logical and or just regular, you can just say and, okay? So that means in order to stay in the loop, I need this condition to be true, but I also need whatever is next to it to be true, to stay in the loop. So the next condition is to say array1 bracket I does not equal to what I'm looking for. It sounds backwards, but it is right. Okay? Because we're trying to specify the condition to stay in the loop. Why do you want to stay in the loop? Let me think. We haven't seen everything in the array, and I have not found what I'm looking for. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because if I use equal instead of not equal, that means stay in the loop as long as I'm seeing what I'm looking for. That doesn't make any sense. As soon as I see what I'm looking for, I should get out of the loop because I found it. Does that make any sense? All right? Now, in this particular case, once you find what you're looking for, you probably want to know whether, one, you found it or not, and two, where is it in the array? Does it make sense? So if I were to do a structure like this, if blah blah, else blah blah, okay? And in this case, I can say key is found at position I, okay? Oh, I just answered my own question, darn it. Okay. I meant to post this as a question so that you guys can answer it. And this one is going to say print $key is not found in the array. Okay. So the first question is, what should I use as a condition here? In other words, what is the condition that is going to signify the fact that I have found that particular key in the array?
That condition over there. Array 1. So
Equals key?
Yeah.
Now, if you do it that way, you run a particular risk. Okay, let me type what you said first, and then I'll point out why it might be risky. Okay. So what you mentioned is exactly that, which is array 1 bracket $i equals $key.
Actually, I would have done this one completely differently. I would have set up a switch before the for loop as not found, and have that kind of condition like in there, not found, and when I found it.
So you have a new variable found, right?
Found.
Okay.
So then I will do if found and
Okay.
do this.
That works too. But if I'm not allowed to introduce any new variable, I have to work with whatever is available. Now, if you do it this way, it seems right, and it will work correctly if what you're looking for is in fact in the array. Because when the loop exits, guess what I is? I is the index of the element that has the content that you're looking for. So this will work. But now the question is, what if the array does not contain the item that you're looking for? If the array doesn't have what you're looking for, by the time we get out of the array, I is no longer less than count array 1, which means I is no longer a valid index into the array.
Right.
So now you're comparing an element that doesn't exist in the array with a particular key. So that's not safe. Okay, in PHP, I think it will work because when you refer to an element that doesn't exist in an array, it will extend the size or the length of the array to make that element exist, but it will have a null value.
Okay.
And a null value is not going to match the key. So it will quote unquote work. But it's very risky because if you do this in some other programming languages, something bad can happen. So I'm not going to do it this way. What about this condition here? Is this actually faster to evaluate and safer too? Would that work? I haven't reached the end. The index has not reached the end yet.
Right.
It's not on it. I was going to put $i is not equal to count.
Well, it's less than. If it's not equal to, it should be less than, should never be greater than.
That's true.
Yeah. So this is a safer way to do it. Okay. And now I can go here and say, where is it? Well, it's just $i. Yep.
So if you do this, how are you going to know if you found the element you're looking for? You're just comparing it, just comparing the key with anything in the array. How are you going to find out if you find it?
It's already compared here. The comparison of the key has already occurred here. That's the reason why I'm getting out of loop. So in other words, if the key is found in the array, the failing of the condition that I've just highlighted would be the reason to get out of the loop, because that condition is going to be false. But if that condition is false, that means the other condition in the conjunction or in the end still has to be true. Because PHP is just like C and C++. When you have a logical AND, it is always going to evaluate from left to right, guaranteed. Now, the other operator, there's no guarantee. If you're using addition, and you have two huge sub-expressions on both sides of the addition, there's no guarantee that it will go from left to right. Okay? Multiplication, same way. Division, the same way. But when you have logical AND, which is ampersand, ampersand, it is always guaranteed to evaluate from left to right. And not only that, with a conjunction or an AND, if the left-hand side is false, it doesn't even bother to evaluate the right-hand side. It is called short-circuited evaluation, or also called lazy evaluation. Okay? Because it is lazy. Okay? There's no need to evaluate the right-hand side if the left-hand side is false.
It is smart.
It is smart. Okay, you can call it smart evaluation. but the point is, it will only evaluate as much as it needs to. And that's the reason why this logic works. Because the second part will never have an invalid index. This I is always valid. Because by the time I get to that part, the first condition has to be true, which means I is still less than count array 1, which means I is still a valid index into this particular array. So this is one of the things that you learn in cisw410. So if you're interested in scripting and you want to look at this code and go like, wow, I want to learn more algorithms or more reasoning of logic of programming like this, you want to take cisw410. It's just, it will greatly enhance your ability to write scripts. So am I answering your question?
Yes. I have another question. So this if statement is outside the loop, right?
The conditional statement is outside the loop. Right.
So you have the variable I.
Yes.
The variable I is the same as variable I in the loop.
Yes.
It's created. Is it the same scope or it's?
It is the same. In fact, if I have another section of code here, it will still be the same I. In other words, variables that you use.
It's only the PHP, right? I know in the JavaScript it's not going to be the same. It's outside the function.
It is. This is not inside the function. This is it's not inside the function. It cannot be a local variable. This variable is global to the entire PHP file. If you have multiple sections of PHP code within the same PHP file, and they will all be referring to the same variable. Okay? Because otherwise it will be very inconvenient. One section, checks a certain thing, sets a certain variable, but it only lives within that section. That would be very, very inconvenient.
This is the same in JavaScript. JavaScript they don't have the same scope. It's different scope.
It's not JavaScript, so I'm not going to confuse with JavaScript here. Yes.
So the $i will be always less than count array, even if it found any item or not.
Could you ask that question again?
The $i, it will also always be less than the count array.
Yes, that is correct.
Even if it found any item or not. So can we use it only for the first one?
Okay. So if I have this particular print to also print I, I has a value of $i. This one will be at exactly count, array 1.
Because the count would be like 5?
Nope, 4. Count is the number of elements in the array. So in this case, we have 4 elements.
Okay, no, but it starts from 1, 2, 3 to 4.
But we are starting from 0.
I is starting from 0.
I starts from 0, but
it has to start from 0. That's part of the language specification.
Okay, both of them starts with 0, I and also the count array. So what would be the size of array? Is it still, that would be 4? And
count array 1 should be 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the I will be, the loop will go through until 3. Yeah?
No. Well, when we exit the loop, I would have a value of 4 when the key is not found in the array. Because, so if you just kind of simulate the execution of the program, I starts off with 0, right?
Yeah.
The first element, which has an index of 0, is not what we are looking for. And then it increments. After incrementing, it goes back to check the condition. In other words, the incrementing has to occur before we check the condition. Okay? So the second iteration will have I being 1 at the beginning. It doesn't match. We increment it from 1 to 2. We go back and check the condition. The condition is okay, it's still true, because we are still with less than count, and we are not seeing the value that we are looking for, right? So it will go through the iteration one more time. I goes from 2 to 3 or 3 to 4? 2 to 3, it go back, we evaluate the condition, and the condition will still be true, right? 3 is less than 4, and we are not looking at the value that we are looking for. Then I gets incremented one more time. It goes from 3 to 4. Then it goes back and check the condition. This time I is 4, count is 4 as well. 4 is less than 4 is false. Then we get out of the loop. So that's why when the item is not found, I is guaranteed to be the same as count. That's why we can use the comparison between I and count to determine whether we found the item or not. Okay?
Yes.
So we just spent about, well, 20 minutes to talk about this, and you guys are buying it. I'm not buying it. So we're going to run it, right? We're going to run this program and check it out. So we will see, we'll use PHP-CGI because we do have that one get variable called key, right? So we're going to run array3, and then we say key equals to tag, okay, which is in the array. And it prints tag is found at position 1. What about Gary? Gary is the last one. So it would have an index of 3. Okay? What about Jack, who's not in the array? It would say it's not found, and I has a value of 4. What if it is missing entirely? There's no key. If there's no key, underscore get square bracket single quote key is going to give you a null value. Okay? So when you compare a null value to a particular string, it is always going to fail the comparison. So it is not going to match anything. So it will print nothing. Okay? So there will be nothing printed here. It's not found in the array. I has a value of 4. That is what it should be printing. Okay? Now this is something that you should be doing too, is when you write some program, you're testing something, don't just run it to figure out what it's going to do. Try to figure out what it's going to do by simulating or emulating what the program should do in your mind with a piece of paper if you need to. And then you run the program, and then you compare whether the expected behavior matches the actual behavior. The best learning happens when they don't. When they don't match. Then you scratch your head and go like, but I thought this is gonna, right? And then you get pissed and be angry at your script, and then you figure out that's not helping. And then you calm down, and then you really think things through, and then you learn something really, really useful. You know, the more pissed off you get, usually the bigger the reward, because you're learning something that is even more important, that's more fundamental. Because if you miss all those your reasoning, okay, if all the reasoning, like 15 minutes or 20 minutes of the reasoning, keep missing the mark, that means that is important. That's an important concept that you're learning. Yep, go ahead.
I had a comment, something to add, like a good
Go ahead.
thing to do would be to do the logic of your program first before you get into the curly brackets and start doing the things, just so you understand like the logic of the program before you get into doing the calculations.
A lot of people ask me the question of, so how did you come up with the code for a particular program? And that's a really hard question to answer. Because what is going on through my mind is not something that is logical, it's not step-by-step, it's not sequential. It just kind of like, the whole thing just kind of, pops up.
Yeah, see, but what you're talking about is what in old programming classes they used to do pseudocode.
Yep.
You write it in English.
And that's what P300 is about, is pseudocoding and focusing on the core concepts of programming and not so much on a particular syntax.
And in procedural language is a step before that. Input-output processing chart, IPO chart, so you write what my inputs are, what my outputs are, and then figure out what my process is. And then from the process, you write the pseudocode.
All right, so let's take a look at this one here, okay, because this is your program. Can we do this loop thing? Create a web page that prints hello world 5 times to the screen inside an H1 using a for loop.
Yes.
Okay. Can you do it using a while loop instead of a for loop?
Yes.
What about the last one, a do while loop that I have not demonstrated?
Yes.
Okay, so what is a do while loop? How is it different from a while loop?
One is the pre-test loop, post-test.
It
The
runs
condition
once.
is the code will always run once.
When it checks.
Always.
And then at the end.
Yeah.
That's what we have.
So with a do while, it would execute the code first, then it checks the condition. If the condition is true, it goes back and executes the code again. With a while loop, it checks the condition first, then it runs the code, then it goes back and checks the condition. So they're only off by a little bit, okay? Do, check, as opposed to check, then do, check, do, okay? but it does have an impact on if you're going through an array, or if you want to do certain things a certain number of times, it does affect what you're going to compare to. So that's the minor little thing that you have to worry about when you have a do while. All right, next one, lists. Create a web page that prints hello world inside an ordered list. Okay, so you should remember which element to use from your HTML class when you have an ordered list. If you don't remember, what do? Don't ask me. Ask the better professor. Ask Google. Okay, just type Google ordered list element. Okay. So you want to print hello world inside an ordered list 20 times, which means it will list like 1 hello world, 2 hello world, and so on. Use any loop you want. Make it alternate between colors with each line. So how do we? So there's many ways to do it. Okay, 3 solutions popped up in my mind right away.
Oh, we just did that exercise, so the module is done.
That's one way to do it. You can make the loop go through 10 times. Each time it will go through 2 print statements, printing one in a certain color, print the next one in a different color. There's no, oh, okay, never mind. It says it has to go through 20 times, so that's not going to work. So you have to know whether you're dealing with an even line or an odd line. So you can use your I index or whatever variable and mod it with 2, compare the result of the mod with 0, you know, that sort of thing. So you need an if statement inside the loop. Are there any questions about nesting? In other words, in this particular case, you will have a nested control structure. You will have a conditional statement, an if statement, inside a for loop. Are there any questions about that concept? All good? Okay.
Question about nested if statements. So
okay.
What is the recommended level of nesting in if statements? How many nesting can you get? As many as you
I do not know the actual limit, but there's no theoretical limit.
But usually how many can you do?
It depends on how many levels you can track in your mind.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
I would say 3 to 4 levels is the max that I can deal with it, but some of you may be able to handle more. You know, it's a personal thing. I prefer my logic to have 2 to 3 levels of nesting, and that's about it, because I can only track 2 to 3 things at a time. You know, being an INTP, I have short-term memory issues.
So it's the same like other languages that you know a lot more.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's a kind of personal thing. It's up to you.
The way to get around that is to write good SQL statements.
No, actually, the way
only if SQL is a part of the equation, but that's not always the case.
The way to get around is the case statement.
All right, array loops. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. So you will need to initialize an array called animals, and it has all of these. Write a for each loop to loop through and print each animal name to the screen inside a paragraph tag. Okay, do we know how to use for each?
Yes, we do.
Okay, then write a second loop using for that does the same thing, except this time your code is what is responsible to print the 1 and the cat. Okay, so we have a solution that's close, but no cigar.
Yeah. So we just need one more variable or add one to it.
Yeah, you need to do something about the index that we are printing here. Okay, so remember what you did with the previous class, the single quote stuff with concatenation and whatnot? That's one way to do it. If you want to be wasteful, use another variable. Use another variable so you can use double quotes again. Okay, so there are many ways to do this. Is that okay? Yeah. All right, you guys are getting the idea. Okay, colors. Use the following array in your code. Use a for each loop to print hello world to the screen 12 times and alternate between each of the colors in the array. So the first line will be red, then blue, then green. So basically you want to iterate through all of these. And how many colors do we have? I sure hope it's less than 12. Looks like it is going to be 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there are exactly 12 colors. So you're going to use all 12 colors. I was hoping that there would be only like 5 colors, and you're supposed to rotate and cycle through all the 5 colors, because then you will be forced to use modulus again. Very good. Because then you would just have to increment the counter, but when you need to decide which color, you just say, index mod 5, put the whole thing in parentheses, and then use that as an index into the array of colors. Okay? But this one is easy because you have exactly 12 colors. Boring. Array commands. So we have colors and then we have animals. Write a script that uses array merge, okay, that's a function in PHP, to merge the 2 arrays together into a new array. Write a loop to print out all the values to the screen in an unordered list. Okay, so once again, if you don't know how to use that particular element, look up Google, just type HTML unordered list element, and it will show you how to do it. Use string to upper to get all the values to print out in uppercase. Okay, if you don't know how to use string to upper, look for this name and then also put PHP as a part of the query just to make sure that you get the PHP version of that explanation. Okay, so array merge is the one that is going like, well, what is it going to do? What is merge? Okay, if you don't know, search for it, right? Google. Okay, so it says you merge 1 or more arrays. And the definition or the description says, merge the elements of 1 or more arrays together so that the values of one are appended to the end of the previous one. It returns the resulting array. In other words, it is the same thing as the dot concatenation. Yeah, but it works on arrays. Okay, so the resulting array is the quote-unquote a concatenation of the arrays that you specify in array merge. So, in other words, it's a bad name. It's a misnomer. It should have been called array concatenation.
So,
because merge has other connotations. Like, what if the 2 arrays have the same element? Merge seems to suggest that only one of the 2 will be kept. But that's not what it's going to do. Yep.
so if the data types are different in different arrays, so one is names, another one is pictures.
Doesn't matter.
So it doesn't matter, it will just pick one array.
It doesn't matter.
5 names and then 5
Correct.
pictures.
Because they can even be objects. They can even be objects because in PHP, it is not a strongly typed language like Java or C++. So that means the elements inside an array can be anything. They don't have to be of the same type. Which sometimes is a good thing, and other times it's not such a good thing.
I think that maybe the merging comes from the fact that you could have the same element like in a hash value. So say I is equal to the same string keys, then the later value will overwrite the first.
So if the input arrays have the same string keys, so in this case, those arrays are key value pairs.
Right.
Okay, and not your usual just straight array. Then the later value of that key will overwrite the previous one. However, if the array contains numeric keys, the later values will not overwrite the original. Instead, it will be appended. So what is appended? Appended to the element, or is it appended as a new element of the finishing array?
I think of the array.
In the array, yep, not the element. Values in the input array with numeric keys will be renumbered with incrementing keys starting from 0 in the result array. All right, sounds a little confusing. So what do we do when we see something that's confusing? We test it, right? We design specific tests to see which way it is going to do it. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this. This is array4.php, and then we'll. Now, how you design these specific tests is important. Okay, the more you program, the more you will know. Oh, I need to know what this feature is going to do. So you will start to understand. Go like, okay, I think it might do this. It might do this. It might do this, right? So you have to design the test to differentiate. Is it doing this? Is it doing this? Or is it doing that? So let's go ahead and do this. So we'll have array 1 is an array with 1, 2, 3 strings. Then we have array 2, which is an array. And this time we'll have 2, 4, 6. I intentionally have one that is overlapping, okay? Because I want to see if merge is going to say, well, after merging, there will only be 1, 2, or 1 TWO, okay?
What is your guess?
Sorry?
What is your guess?
Well,
you know, but for us.
This is still an array that is indexed by numeric value,
Okay.
so it's just going to append. In other words, the finished array should be 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 6. It's just a concatenation of the two. But at least that's what I think it is. So we will say for each, okay, now this is the other thing that is really kind of cool, is the array that you are going through, well, I don't know whether it will work or not, so we'll find out. Can we put array merge in here? In other words, we are calling array merge, and we are immediately using the result of the merge without storing that into a different variable first. Okay? I think it should work. Okay? As item, print an item after the merge is item. There we go. All right. So I'm expecting this program to print 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 6 in that specific order. Now the other way to interpret this, now I think that has to be the way. There's no other interpretation in this case. So we have PHP array4.php 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 6. Yep. Because these two arrays have numeric indexes. So it is just a straight append or concatenation. Yep, go ahead.
So, did it make a new array or just create the new array?
Did you ask a question again?
The array, the array function.
The array merge.
Did it create a new array or just?
Yes, it returns. Okay, so the analogy is concatenation. Okay, so just imagine that you have quotes, ABC, and single quotes, dot, open quotes, DEF, and end quotes. Okay, or better yet, you have $string1 being ABC, $string2 being DEF. So you have two variables of string values. And then you say print
And you say like
the concatenation of the two.
New array equal to merge array 1 and array 2, and new array become concatenation of array 1 and array 2. And we make a new array. Not just a print.
It returns, the function returns a new array, yes. You can choose to use the new array right away, like what I did, or you can choose to use a variable to store the new array if that is what you want. But you do not have to use a new variable to store the new array, then use the new variable if you only have one place to use it, like what this program is doing.
It shows you can merge an array, like you can merge an array with itself. So you could have an array, you could merge an array to that, you don't have to rename that array. You could use the same variable.
Let's give it a try. What do you say?
Okay, so let's try this.
So change array to array.
Okay, so change this one. Let's make this more fun.
It's not array 1. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, array 1 with array 1, and then we'll have another array merge here. Okay, how convoluted do you guys want it to be? How about that? There we go. What is it going to print? So once again, I'm throwing something at you, okay? So before we actually run the program, we want to figure this out in our head first, okay? So what you do is you look at this whole thing from a structural perspective, and you say, what has to be done first? Then what do we do? And then what do we do? Okay? The outermost array merge cannot execute until it knows what it is merging, right? Yeah. So we have to evaluate from the inside out. Okay? What is deepest inside the parentheses has to be evaluated first. But you do that anyway, right? With all the usual arithmetic, equations and formulae and whatnot, you always start with the innermost portion of the parentheses. You don't start with the outermost first, right? So it's the same thing here. So the first one, the very first merge we can do is this one. So now we end up with 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Right. The next one is this one over here, which is also 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So now you have two arrays. Each one is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The other one is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 as well. You merge those two. Now you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
What times?
Yeah, so you will end up with 12 things printing.
Right.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Each
All right.
of them 6 things.
Let's check it.
Are you guys convinced?
Show us.
Okay, so let's give it a try. So you got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Exactly 12 times. But do you see how you analyze the code? You start from the innermost part, and then you move your way out.
You can't really see it. You jump down a line and you can see the ifs, rather than put it all in one line.
How do you break it into multiple lines?
In certain cases, when you have nested ifs, it's just good practice.
Okay, if you really want to break this into multiple lines, this is how I would do it. So I would say for each, and then the as is going to be less indented, okay, because this is really just indicating, it's separating the array from the item. Okay, it's doing something that's smart ass. There's a difference between smart and smart ass. Smart ass means this is not what I wanted to do, but it's doing it anyway. So you can do it this way, okay? This is one way to break it up, so you can see the nesting of the function calls. Okay,
Yeah.
You can do it this way, whichever way makes it clear, okay, what is the ordering, what is inside which one is fine. Are we doing okay so far with this code here? Okay.
This way is very common. This way is very common.
This?
The way that you use it's
okay.
very common. And
Yeah.
people read it.
You guys haven't seen my SQL queries. I'll give you an idea of what nesting means. Okay. Because this is not nesting at all. So I'm going to show you some nesting. Okay. Nope, not this one. The one about it. Import. There we go. Oh, this is not. Oh, this is. You haven't seen anything yet.
I got one that's 900 lines.
A single query.
No,
This is one single query, right there. It has a select. Earlier you mentioned something about you have to join 4 tables for the project at the end of this semester.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna up the ante a little bit. And I think this one, does it have a select? Yeah, this one has a select inside of the select. So you can see there's a select here, and inside there's a select here. So we're joining with the result of a sub query.
Jesus.
And I think there's an update query that will do about the same thing. This one is about as long. This is another one.
Are we supposed to, what time are we supposed to go to the lab today?
Huh?
Are we going to the lab today?
No, we are not going to go to the lab today because that's just using a lot of time
Okay.
for nothing. If you guys want to take a break, let me know and we can take a break.
Can we do that?
Yes? You want to take a break? Okay, let's go take a break. How long? 20 minutes? How about 10?
Yeah.
10 minutes? Okay. So we'll be back here by 7:25. So during the break, I'm going to stop the recorder, so remind me to turn it back on again.